are just starting with our LSAT prep. And so just wanted to share a couple more free options that might be useful to you as you get rolling. One of them that I really love is that you can join the first session of one of our LSAT classes for free. Our LSAT classes are offered in most major metropolitan areas and also are offered online. And you can come to a free first session, which gives you a great overview of the LSAT itself and spends a lot of time diving into logic games and logical reasoning. We also have a really cool self-study tool called LSAT Interact that's kind of an adaptive series of videos that covers the complete LSAT curriculum. And you can try that tool for free on our website. So the link is there if you'd like to go to our website and try some of those tools to learn a little bit more. Okay, Kelly, cool. 2 weeks away from, or sorry, 2 weeks into your studying for the February 22nd test. Awesome. All right, well, today we're going to focus on logic games. We have a particular narrow topic that we're going to work on, which is called unconditional questions. But I'm also happy to help with any bigger picture logic games questions or strategy concerns that anyone has. I'm going to start by just kind of putting this goal or this topic in context. So within logic games, there are three major types of questions that you're going to see on any given game. And they are orientation questions, conditional questions, and unconditional questions. And when I say questions, I'm not talking about the game itself, the diagram that you're going to set up, the set of rules. I'm talking about the actual questions that you're going to answer in response to a particular set of rules or a particular game. Those three question types each have very distinct approaches. Orientation questions are the first question usually after you set up a game. So they're going to be the first question after the rules. It's typically going to ask you which of the following could be a complete and accurate scenario based on the rules that you've been given. The second type of question is called a conditional question, and those questions look something like this. If H is in the fourth spot, which of the following could be true? So we call them conditional questions because they give you a sort of a new piece of information, a condition that's only true for that particular question. And you're supposed to imagine, okay, if this is hypothetically happening, what else could be happening and make some deductions. The last type of question is what I and many students think of as the most challenging type of question on logic games, and that's the unconditional question. The unconditional question just asks you something like, which of the following must be true? Or which of the following could be true? But it doesn't give you any specific information to work from. So unlike the conditional question, which gives you this new little piece of information, an unconditional question is just based on the rules, based on the diagram, what has to be true or what could be true or what has to be false or what could be false. It can be a very challenging question because a lot of folks are not really sure how to get started with a question like this. And that's how I felt when I was studying for the LSAT as well. So my goal for y'all today is to give you some tools that you can practice for this challenging question type that you're going to see a lot of. It's probably going to comprise about half of the questions that you see on logic games. So mastering it's going to be important both to your accuracy on logic games and also to your speed. This type of question that we're working on today is often a really big time suck for folks because, as I mentioned, they're not sure how to get started or maybe don't have the most efficient strategy yet for this question. So I'm hoping that you walk out of here today with a few efficient strategies for this particular question type, as well as a strong understanding of how this question type works. So here is a written recap of what an unconditional question is for those of you who are note takers out there or screenshotters. This is for you. An unconditional question is a question with no hypothetical scenario or new information. And it could take the form of any of the bullet points listed here, or even a slight variation on one of these. Most typically, you're going to be asked for either something that must be true or could be true. You could also be asked for something that must be false or could be false. Or they might use the word except to indicate that you're looking for something that must be false or could be false. The first thing that we're going to look at is what is the difference in your mindset when you're looking at a question that's asking you for something that must be true versus something that could be true. So I'm going to give you a little scenario. This is not a real logic game yet. We'll get to those in a few minutes. This is just a scenario that I created to kind of simulate an unconditional question. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. What I'd like for you to do is read this set of rules over here. And then I want you to take a look at the question and tell me in the chat window which of these answers would be correct. And unlike on the LSAT, I'm going to say that for this question, there could possibly be more than one answer. So I want you to tell me any of these answers which must be true according to the scenario there. So I'm going to hop off the camera for just a minute to give you a chance to consider this. And when you have your answer, you can put it in the chat window. And once I see some answers rolling in, we'll stop and talk about it. Okay, let's chat about this. So the goal here is for you to understand what your mindset or approach should be to a must be true question. So the little blue box at the bottom of the screen gives you some guidelines for the way to think about choosing an answer for a must be true question. What I'm trying to do when I'm asked if something must be true is to basically show that based on all the rules I've been given, it can never be false. And the only way for me to show that is to try to make it false and see if that's possible. And if I can't make it false, then it has to be true. So our strategy for a must be true question is to attempt to disprove each of the answer choices. And one of two things will happen. Either I will be able to disprove that answer choice, in which case it doesn't have to be true and I'll cross it off, or I won't. I'll find out that it's not possible for that to be false and I'll have found the correct answer. So let's apply that mindset to these three answer choices here and see which ones of them hold up. So answer A, Allie will break her New Year's resolution to exercise daily in January. So in order to disprove this, I would think, okay, is it possible for this not to be true? Is it possible that Allie will not break her New Year's resolution to exercise daily in January? Well, I know that she'll break at least one of her New Year's resolutions by February, but it doesn't say which one. So it seems like it's possible that it won't be the resolution to exercise. Maybe she'll break the resolution to give more compliments in January. I also see if Allie breaks her resolution to exercise daily, she will do so before she breaks her resolution to read a book a month. But that's a hypothetical. The if there indicates I don't actually know if I'm going to break my resolution to exercise daily at all. And then the final one is just about keeping my resolution to spend time with my dog until June. So even with all of these rules put together, there's still room, it's still possible for me to break a different resolution in January. It's not going to be the one about my dog, but maybe I'll break the one about giving more compliments or reading a book per month. So because I could see a way where this is false, where I don't break my resolution to exercise daily in January, I'm going to cross it off. It does not have to be true. So I've said, okay, is it possible for this to be false? Yeah, so it's not the right answer. So now let's approach B. Is it possible for it to be false that I will keep no more than 3 resolutions in 2020? Well, for that to be false, I would have to keep 4 resolutions. So I'm going to check to see, is it possible to keep 4 resolutions? Well, I had 4 to begin with, and the first rule tells me I'm going to break at least 1 by February. So it looks like it's not possible for this to be false. It has to be true that I'm not going to keep more than 3 resolutions. I can't keep 4 according to the rules. So B looks like a possible correct answer to this question: which of the following must be true? Now, if this were the actual LSAT, the nice thing about these questions is there's only going to be one answer that works. So if I've found an answer that works and I've proven it to myself, I can actually stop there. I can select this answer and I can move on. And oftentimes that's going to be the best decision strategically in terms of time, because I'm going to be in a pretty big time rush when I'm trying to get all of these questions done in 35 minutes. For the sake of this exercise, we'll take a look at answer choice C and confirm whether it has to be true or not. So again, I'm going in with the mindset, is it possible for it to be false that I will keep my resolution to spend more time with my dog? Well, it says I'll keep my resolution to spend more time with my dog until at least June, but that still leaves about half of the year for me to break it. So I could say I will break my resolution in September, and then answer choice C will be false. I will not have kept my resolution to spend more time with my dog. So I'm going to cross off answer choice C. So again, the point here is just to internalize this mindset. What do you want to do when you're asked which must be true? You want to ask yourself, can any of these answers be false? And try to cross off the answers that can be false. The one that cannot be false is going to be your correct answer. I'll pause for a moment and let me know if you have any questions so far. Okay. So we've seen now a question that's asking us for something that must be true. But the LSAT will also sometimes ask us what could be true. And we want to approach that a little bit differently. Now we're no longer looking for something that absolutely cannot be false. We're just looking for something that's possible based on all of the rules. So I'd like for you to take a moment now. Nothing has changed over on the left side here. All the rules and resolutions are the same. The answer choices are still the same. I want you to consider which of these answer choices could be correct if the question were which of the following could be true instead of must be true. And again, it's possible that there's more than one correct answer to this question. So let me know in the chat when you've had a moment to do that. Okay, let's think these through together. I see Samantha's got some great thinking coming in the chat window. So she said that I could break my resolution to exercise based on the first rule. So let's check that out. So we're looking at answer choice A, that I will break my resolution to exercise daily in January. And now I'm not thinking, does this have to be true? I'm just thinking, is this possible? So the February, so that makes it reasonable that I could break this resolution in January. And then it says if I break my resolution to exercise, I'm going to do so before I break my resolution about reading. So that still makes it possible for me to break this in January. And the third rule doesn't really affect this at all. So basically what I'm looking for, is there any reason based off of these rules that this wouldn't be possible? And it seems like it definitely is possible. The rules allow for this to happen. So A could be a possible correct answer. Let's look at B. I will keep no more than 3 resolutions in 2020. Is this something that's possible? Well, again, the first rule tells me I'm going to break at least 1. So this certainly seems like it could be true. And in fact, it was the answer to our last question, what must be true? If something must be true, then it definitely needs to be possible. So answer choice B is an example of something that both must be true and could be true. Let's look at answer choice C. I will keep my resolution to spend more time with my dog. Well, the third rule addresses this. It says I'm going to keep that resolution until at least June. It doesn't say anything about me ever having to break it. So C is also something that could be true. So notice the shift here. When I moved from a must to a could be true, 2 more answer choices became correct. It's very common on the LSAT logic games when you get a must be true question, like the last one that we had, for some of the incorrect answers to be things that are possible, but they don't actually have to be true. So we want to have a different mindset when we're working on a could be true question. We're no longer trying to prove that each of these things could be false. There are definitely answers here that could be false, like A and C could be false. We're trying to just prove, is it even possible for this to be true at all? So now you've got a fundamental understanding of the difference between a could be true and a must be true question. We're going to take this now into an actual logic game. The first thing that we're going to do is just take some time to orient ourselves to the game. So I'm going to give you just the setup. You're going to see the situation and the rules. For those of you who are new to the LSAT, typically when I'm doing a logic game, I pretty much always want to take some notes on the setup and often to build a little diagram of the setup. I also want to spend some time thinking about inferences. What can I figure out based on the rules that I've been given? All of that is often going to take me between 2.5 and 3.5 minutes for a particular logic game. So what I'm going to do next is show you just the setup. You're not going to have any questions yet, so you won't see could be true or must be true, but we'll do that in a little bit. And I'd like for you to take a pen and paper and take some time. I'll give you about 3.5 minutes to sketch out a diagram for this or take notes on the rules in whatever way seems the most helpful to you. So here's the diagram, and if you could just type in the chat window done when you're done, and if we finish early, then we can start reviewing a little early. Okay, that's about 3 minutes. So we're going to take a look at an example of a possible diagram for this game. Um, with any logic game, it's often possible for folks to make different versions of diagrams for the same game. And oftentimes there's more than one possible version of a diagram that might be helpful to you. So it's possible that your diagram will look a little bit different than mine, and that's okay. What I want you to consider is whether there's anything from my diagram that you would like to add to your diagram, or anything about the way this diagram is set up that might be useful to you, while still keeping in mind the advantages of the way that you diagrammed this. The most important thing about any diagram is that it is accurate and it yields as many possible inferences as you can make. So let's check this out. So we've got a scenario where someone's buying 7 houses, and they seem to be leading us to think about the order in which these houses are going to be shown: first and second, third, fourth, and fifth, and so on. Typically, when I'm asked to think about order, which is about half the games on logic games, I'm often going to set up some kind of number line. So here I make a number line 1 through 7. But I noticed that they're asking me to kind of group these in a morning, afternoon, and evening. So I drew a little line in between the sections and just labeled them morning, afternoon, and evening. And then I needed to account for the rules. So we start with J has to be shown in the evening. I don't know exactly when in the evening J is going to be shown. So what I do not want to do is just put J in 6 or J in 7. So instead, I put kind of this little cloud of mystery above spaces 6 and 7 that show me J's going to go over here somewhere. I also always create a bank of the letters that are going to be used in a given logic game so that I can cross things off as they get placed on the game. So even though J doesn't have a specific spot yet, it's kind of accounted for. It's somewhere in the evening, so I'm going to cross it off. Next, I'm told that K cannot be shown in the morning. So at first, I just put a little K under spaces 1 and 2 and slash it off. And this K in the afternoon comes later. I'll show you where I got that from in just a minute. But if something cannot be put in a certain spot, you can always just write it underneath that spot and cross it out. Then I'm told that L has to be shown at some time after K and at some time before M is shown. So I'm going to make a little chain that says K comes before L, which comes before M. And you can see that down here at the bottom. You'll notice that I don't use an underscore. I specifically use kind of a long dashed line to separate those out. That's because if I were to use an underscore, that would mean that there's exactly one space between each of these. And that's not really what this rule is saying. This rule is saying that these letters are arranged in some flexible way where K is before L and M is after L. So I write that rule down. And then from that rule, I start thinking about inferences. So I know that K cannot be in the morning. And I start thinking about, okay, well, what would happen on the other end of the number line? Well, K has to have 2 things come after it. So if K were over here in the evening, there would not be room for L and M to come after it. So I make the inference that K is going to go in the afternoon, and I throw that on my diagram. I cross off K because it's accounted for. One thing that I like to do on all logic games is think about which letters have been kind of given a rule or accounted for in some way, and which letters are just kind of free floating. So at this point, I've been given a rule for J, K, L, and M, but I haven't been told anything about N, O, and P. So I circle those and note that they're kind of very flexible. The other thing I noticed is at this point, I hadn't been told anything about the morning, but I know that it's not going to be K in the morning. And if it's not K, then L and M are going to come after K. They also can't be in the morning. J can't be in the morning. So none of the letters that I've been given rules for can be in the morning. I've got a highly restricted area over here in the morning. There's not that many letters that can go there. So it's worth my time to think about which letters are left to go there. And the 3 letters that still could go in the morning are N, O, and P. So I make a little cloud of mystery and I put N/O/P. 2 of those 3 letters will go here. I'm not sure which ones. This is how I would set up the diagram. I'm going to pause for a moment. Let me know if you had any differences that you'd like to talk about with your diagram, or just any questions about how this one works. Okay. If there are no questions right now, I'm going to leave this diagram on the screen, but the scenario will go away. There's just not enough room to fit both. And I'm going to show you a few questions. And these questions are going to be back in that category of unconditional questions. So here's the first one. I want you to call to mind what we talked about with must be true questions, how your goal is to attempt to disprove each answer choice. Keep that in mind, and I'm going to give you about 1.5 minutes to work through this question based on the diagram that we created. If you get an answer before then, you can put it in the chat window. Okay, that's about 1.5 minutes. If you have an answer, you can put it in the chat window. Okay, so I'm going to navigate away from this slide for just a second to talk about some strategy stuff, and then we'll come back to it. So on a question like this, now that we're actually kind of in a real logic game, there are a few things that are going to make my life a little bit easier. I think about the work that I do on a question like this in kind of 2 phases. I try to be kind of as lazy as possible as I can on these questions. So I want to get it right the easiest way that I can. So I go into each question thinking, hopefully this is obvious. I don't want to put in like a ton of work for each answer choice only to find out that answer choice D is just like glaring at me and obviously correct. So in order to make sure that I don't miss an obvious easy answer, I take a first glance at the answers themselves, and I ask myself if they point me in any particular direction. So looking at these answers, what I notice is that only 3 of the letters are involved, K, L, and M, and they're those 3 letters that are in this chain. So before I even start evaluating these answers, I pause for a second to just kind of refresh my memory on what I know about those and where they might go. I know that K has to be in the afternoon, which tells me that L and M are going to follow K, and they're going to be either in the afternoon, in the evening, or both. So I've got that kind of in mind before I even go into the answer choices. Then I'm going to take a first pass through the answers and compare them to what I just noticed, compare them to the board. And I'm basically looking for, is there anything that's obviously wrong or obviously right? And also, is there anything that seems more likely to be right? Maybe I'm not sure it's right, but like I'd like to work on it a little bit and try it. So let's check this out. I go through the answers. K is shown in the evening is a great example of an obviously wrong answer. K is right there in the afternoon. I can just cross this off. L is shown in the afternoon or evening. At first glance, this seems like both of these might be possible. Both of those come after K, so I'll leave those for now. M is shown in the morning seems definitely wrong based off of what I have in my little cloud over here. I had already narrowed this down to N, O, and P. M is shown in the afternoon. That seems like maybe that could happen. So I'm gonna leave that for now. So notice just on this first pass through, I've really improved my odds of getting this question right from 1 in 5 to 1 in 3. And I've done so very quickly. I haven't been lucky enough to find an obvious answer just yet, though. So I'm going to have to move on to this phase where I say, all right, I guess I have to work for it. So let me try to break the answer. This goes back to our philosophy or our mindset for must be true questions, where we're asking ourselves, is it possible for this to be false? And we might start by doing that in our head. We may also sometimes actually have to kind of sketch out a diagram on our paper to prove to ourselves whether it has to be false. So I'm looking at these and I'm thinking, okay, are any of these sort of more likely to be correct than the others? So I can tackle that one first. I noticed that there's 2 that have to do with L. So I'm going to kind of jump up here to B and C and think those through. And I'm looking to see, does this have to be false? So is it possible for this to be false? So L is shown in the afternoon. Is it possible for that to be false? Well, if that were false, L would go in the morning, which isn't possible, or it would go in the evening. Let me think about would it work if it went in the evening. If I put L here, I'd have to have M after it, but I also already have J. So it doesn't seem like it's possible for L to go in the evening, and it can't go in the morning, so it looks like the only place L could go is in the afternoon. So I've found my correct answer. L has to be shown in the afternoon. I'm going to circle B. And the last thing I usually do before I move on is just double check, did I answer the right question? The LSAT jumps around so much between could be true, could be false, must be true, must be false, that it's easy to get turned around about what you're trying to prove to yourself. So one last time I revisit the question stem and I say, okay, does this have to be true? Yeah, L has to be shown in the afternoon. I found my correct answer. I don't even have to do any work on answer choice C or E. It's not possible for 3 of them to be correct. So I'm going to choose B and I'm going to move on. This one was a nice one because I was able to solve it by thinking it through in my head without actually having to put pencil to paper for any of this, and solve it pretty quickly that way. And I saw a couple of you were able to solve it as well. In the chat window, it looks like Abigail and Samantha both nailed it. So awesome start to your LSAT prep there. Let me know if you have any questions. And I'll put this back up for a minute just to kind of recap what we just did. So we first took a glance at the answers to see if they pointed us towards a particular part of the board or a particular group of letters. Then we looked for easy eliminations or obvious correct answers. We kind of thought about where would be sort of the most likely place for the correct answer to be. And then we attempted to disprove the answer choices in order to prove this to ourselves. So that's an example of a real must be true question that was on an actual LSAT test. Now we're going to take a look at an example of a could be true question. Same diagram, same game, just a different question. I'll give you a minute and a half again to give this a shot, and feel free to put your answer in the chat window when you're done. Okay, that's about a minute and a half. Just like before, I'm going to navigate away from this question for just a second to talk about some strategies for could be true. You'll notice that they're really the same in most respects. So just like with a must be true question, I'm always going to try to take the easy way if I can. I'm going to look at the answers to see if they point me anywhere. I'm going to take a first pass through to see if any are obviously wrong or right, which ones are more likely to be right. And then if I have to, if I haven't found the answer by then, I'll work for it. I'll do the work in my head if I can, on my paper if I need to. The only difference is now, instead of trying to disprove the answer, since it's a could be true and not a must be true, I'm going to try to prove that the answer can work. So I'll actually just kind of try it out. So let's go back to the question. And we'll start with that first step of where are these pointing me? It looks like there's a lot of different letters involved here, but I see that 3 answer choices have to do with J, and 2 answer choices have to do with this cluster of letters that I've put in the morning, N, O, and P. So I'm going to remind myself what I know after J, about J, which is that J is in the evening, and I see the word after there a lot. So I know that there's really only one spot for something to go after J. So I'm going to keep that in mind. For answers D and E, I know that N, O, or P are going to fill the morning slot. So I'm going to need 2 of those for the morning. So now that I'm primed, I'm going to kind of go through the answer choices, looking for things that are obviously right or wrong. So K is shown sometime after J. This is obviously not possible. I have it right here on my diagram that K is in the afternoon and J is in the evening, so I'm going to cross that one off. L is shown sometime after J. I don't have anything super obvious about that right now, so I'm going to hang on to it. P is shown at sometime after J. Also not super obvious. I know that P could be one of the 2 in the morning, but if P were, over here in the evening, I'd still have N and O for the morning. So I'm going to leave that one. N and O are shown sometime after M. Well, I know that M is going to come somewhere after K, sort of on the back end here. And if I were to take N and O and put them back here, that would only leave 1 letter for the morning, which would be P. And I have to have 2 different letters. So I'm going to cross this one off because it creates a problem for me in the morning. N and P are shown sometime after K. That seems very similar. K is here in the afternoon. If N and P were to go later, I'd only have O for the morning. So I'm going to cross that one off. So now I'm down to just 2 answer choices. And I've done all this work in my head so far, gotten rid of some easy eliminations. Now I'm down to a 50-50 shot of getting this right, which is great. I'm going to go to that final step of actually trying to prove one of these answers true. So I'll move into B first. L is shown sometime after J. So if I put L after J, L is going to be in space 7. Then I think about what rules this relates to. Well, M has to come after L, and there wouldn't be any room for that. So that's not possible. So I'm going to cross off B. And hey, the only answer left is C. I am not actually going to take the time to attempt to prove that C is correct. I'm going to trust the work that I've done so far. And keeping in mind that I'm under significant time pressure, I'm going to choose C and I'm going to move on. So there you have the process for a could be true question. I'll put those strategies back up for a second and just give you a moment to digest, take any notes that you want to, and let me know if you have any questions. All right, we're going to take a look at one more question. This is an unconditional question that doesn't fit neatly into the category of must be true or could be true. So I'm going to encourage you to think flexibly on this one. When you get an unexpected question stem, you always want to make sure that you take the time to consider what is the question asking you for and what do you want your mindset to be before you start going through the answer choices. So I'll give you another minute and a half. Give this question a shot. Okay, that's about a minute and a half. I see a couple answers have come in. You can keep them coming. Let's talk about how to interpret this question. So now we're being asked, which of the following is a pair of houses that cannot be shown consecutively in either order? So I'm looking for something that's just not possible based on this game. Another way to put that is that I'm looking for something that has to be false. I can't have these letters in this particular order. Just like when I'm looking for something that must be true, if I want to prove that something has to be false, in order to do that, I'm going to kind of try to show a counter example. So I'm going to say, okay, does this answer have to be false? Well, let me see what would happen if I tried to make it true. Remember that on a must be true question, we were trying to make the answers false. We were trying to show they didn't have to be true. On a must be false question, we're trying to make the answers true to show that they do not have to be false. So we're using the same type of strategy. I'm going to try to show a counter example similar to what I was doing on must be true questions. So that's true for all of these very absolute questions that have a must or a cannot in the question stem. Now, again, I always want to try to take the easy way out. Unfortunately for me, when I scan these these answer choices and kind of think them through in my head, I don't see any obvious answer choices that jump out to me as obviously correct or obviously incorrect. And maybe that was different for you. Maybe you had some inferences going on in your brain that helped you select this a little faster. But we're all going to be in a position at some point where we don't have any obvious eliminations or obvious correct answers. And I've noticed in the past that this is a place where a lot of folks get really stuck. If I don't see the answer sitting there on my diagram, then what am I supposed to do? And it's really, really important that you have a strategy that you can put into place when you don't see an obvious reason that one of these answers must be right or must be wrong. And that strategy that we want to use is called the plug and chug. Basically, I'm going to test these answer choices one at a time until I find the correct answer. And I'm going to do that on paper. I'm going to actually kind of sketch out answer choices until I prove something to myself. If I'm going to do that, I know that it might take a while. And so I don't want to be doing it on every question. That's why I'm always looking for the easy way out. But sometimes I am going to have to do it. And if I need to do it, I want to make sure that I dive in right away. And so a couple of things are going to help me be successful here. First is having a clear goal. So I'm going to think about what type of question this is. And based on that type of question, I should have something pop immediately into my head of what I'm trying to do with the answer choices. If it were a must be true question, for example, I'm trying to make a counterexample work to show that that answer is wrong. If it were a could be true question, I'm going to test the answer. If it works, it's right. In this case, this is a must be false question. So basically, if I can find a way that it could be true, then it's wrong. So I'm going to go through each answer choice trying to show that it could be true. A lot of folks will think, I don't want to do this because it takes too long. So let's think about ways that we can make it go faster. One great way to do it is to use our previous work. A lot of times in logic games, as we're working through the questions, we'll set up a lot of sort of hypothetical diagrams to help us answer different questions. And so when I'm thinking about what has to be true or has to be false, I can often look for counterexamples in diagrams that I've already created. I don't have that on this particular game, but it's something that I employ very often when I've done more questions in a game. I can also make it go a little faster by being thoughtful about which answers to test first and looking for answers that maybe have a lot of restrictions attached to them that might trigger something that must be true or false. I can make this go faster by just getting down to it right away. A lot of times the reason this takes too long is because folks spend too much time up front trying to think their way to the answer and not enough time just working it out on pencil and paper. I could play the answers against each other. So sometimes the diagram I create for one answer will actually disprove multiple answers at the same time. So I can check for that as I work. And I can make sure that I quit when I find the right answer. I don't want to do more work than I have to. So let's go back and see what this question would look like if I do it through the plug and chug. So I've got a must be false question, which means that I'm going to try to create a scenario where the answer choice could be true in order to disprove it. And I'm not going to create that scenario directly on my original diagram. This diagram is precious. I don't want to mess it up with some hypothetical stuff that's only true for this particular question or maybe isn't true at all. So instead, I'm going to create a quick little diagram next to the answer choice that I'm working on. I'm not going to make them all right away, but I'm just going to make one like this. This is what I would actually do on test day. And I'm going to say, okay, J and K. I'm trying to prove a counterexample that they can be shown consecutively. I know that K has to be afternoon and J has to be evening. So the only way for this to work is for me to put K here and J here. And then I'm going to think about what happens with the rest of the letters if I do that. Well, what I know is that K comes before L and M. So that would mean I need to put L and M back here, but there's not room for 2 more letters. So it looks like this can't work. And if this can't work, then I found the answer to the question already. Hey, lucky me. It was answer choice A. So again, don't be afraid to just test answer choices by writing things down. If this is the only way you're approaching these questions, then you might want to look at some other strategies. But this is going to be a way to approach some questions on the LSAT. And it's going to be tough if you don't embrace it early enough. All right, so let's recap. What are the skills that you're going to need in order to get unconditional questions right on logic games? So first, you're going to need to have the right mindset for each of the different types of questions. This is something that you can and should memorize. When you see a could be true question, you should know my job is to prove each of the answer choices. I'm going to try to make it work. When you see a must be true question, you should immediately know I'm trying to make counterexamples work and I'm trying to eliminate. This can be really tough to think about quickly and under pressure when you have to kind of remind yourself, wait, how does this work? So you want to just memorize this stuff, make flashcards for it so that when you see that type of question, you know exactly what to do. And then you also want to know all the strategies that you can use and start practicing them in order from fastest to slowest on any given question. So the fastest way to get one of these questions right is if you just see the answer really obviously on your board or from your inferences. The second fastest way is if you have a diagram that you've already created for a previous question and you can find the answer there. If you can't do that, then you want to be strategic about figuring out which answer should I test first, and then don't be afraid to use the plug and chug strategy. All right, so that wraps up our lesson for tonight. If you are interested in seeing more of Manhattan Prep's teaching, you can check out our upcoming courses on our website. Remember that you can try the first session of any of these courses, which are both in-person and online, for free. We offer our in-person courses in most major metropolitan areas, and then lots of great online options.